Joining me now, Dan Favale of Bleacher Report covering our New York Knicks. Thank you so much for hopping on, man. We are recording this right before the Knicks and Bucks play on Friday. Now, thank you so much for hopping on, Dan. What's been the most interesting thing about the New York Knicks so far?
I think it's been to focus on the Rosie. The most interesting thing for me has been the play of Mitchell Robinson has been absolutely dominant defensively and is just the stuff that he can do around the basket where it's not just protecting the rim or swatting shots, it's deterring them. Is that there are a handful of guys right now. I think when you get into the lane, you have players that are maybe triple, like guessing what they're going to do because they know that guy is there. If you do a short list of 10 to 12, Mitchell Robinson is certainly on that, and I would think fairly high up there right now. And he does force some limitations onto your offense, but the Knicks do a pretty good job of limiting themselves on offense a lot of the time. And so Mitchell Robinson has been a huge part of whatever success they've had. And the final thing, or the two final things with him is I think he's gotten a lot more disciplined over the past few years, where I know the jokes were he's kind of foul happy. Like, this is not Jaren Jackson Jr. We're talking about. And the other thing is he makes life hell on the glass for just everybody, which is he is strong, but he's not like, he doesn't look super girth. Like, he looks strong, but he's not like this super girthy guy who's going to throw you around. Like, this is someone who is, I would say, on the leaner side, but strong, but still really just able to battle on the glass. And every missed shot, whether it's an opponent's or the Knicks' own, it's just a battle for the other team to get the rebound.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Wasn't there a game earlier this year where he had 10 offensive rebounds?
Uh, yeah, if you told me it was 15, 20 offensive rebounds, I would just absolutely believe it. And it's part of the reason I get so frustrated with Josh Hart and Julius Randle a lot this year. But like, Josh Hart is so hesitant to take these threes. And in my head, I'm kind of, and other people have talked about this too, and probably the inspiration for how I'm feeling, it's just shoot that. Like, if Josh Hart's 2 of 7 from the 3-point line, how many of those misses you think Mitchell Robinson is getting? 2 or 3 a night if he's on the
Yeah,
floor? Throw it up there.
at least one for sure. Like this, he has been impressive, Robinson especially, and especially on the defensive end too. But you alluded to it. There are some definite offensive issues with this group. Starting 2 and 3, played some tough defenses. Don't want to like put the cart before the horse here too much, but they just split a home and home with Cleveland. Julius Randle is currently at this point shooting 28% from the field, and I'm rounding up on that. Why do you think the offense is so stuck in the mud?
I think a big part of it is there's probably just some early season noise in there where Jalen Brunson is shooting like a negative percentage on 2-pointers right now.
Sure.
But when you look at the two things that stand out to me, when you look at Julius Randle specifically, he was moving the ball a bit better to start the year. That last Cleveland game was super concerning from a process standpoint, just looking at what he was doing. Uh, they are so much easier to defend when Julius Randle is playing like this. And the every other year jokes are kind of a cliche, but look, we're on track to go through them again where they might be accurate, as well as you think that maybe he's rebounded the ball at points, as well as he's passed the ball at points. When he's not shooting or not shooting well, that's another player that you're just fine helping off of. And then all of a sudden, the other night in Cleveland, you're putting Josh Hart in the starting lineup. That's another guy you can help off of. Mitchell Robinson's already a non-shooter. And so it makes life so difficult on Jalen Brunson, who's had to work. He's shooting really well on off the dribble threes this year, but he's kind of had to live out there because he can't get to the rim as often just because the paint is so packed. There are bodies everywhere he's turning. And if you go and look at how hard he needs to work for some of the shots he's getting off, or even where it feels like he's settling or bailing out because he's getting shots off earlier rather than going through the song and dance of like trying to, meander his way and create his way through all this traffic, that's a real problem. And even with RJ Barrett shooting the ball well, even with Emmanuel quickly playing really well, I've been impressed with Dante DiVincenzo's fit from a variant standpoint where he injects some chaos into both ends of the floor, where it's the Knicks are not super inventive with their movement on offense away from the ball. Dante DiVincenzo is going to move around anyway because that's what he does. But even with what I would view as those pluses, there's just not enough room to operate, and they need to figure out a way to open up the floor. And for that to happen with the personnel that they have, it's probably going to come back to Julius Randle.
Just to add some more numbers to that, true shooting percentage by starter so far, Randle's at 37.9, Brunson's at 49. Barrett's at 57.3. Hey, look at RJ Barrett, who's lauded for his shooting efficiency for all time. Uh, Mitchell Robinson, 49.7. Quentin Grimes, 47.8. Like, the average true shooting percentage last year was basically where Barrett was. And this team has just been, they have really struggled to space for each other so far. We've talked about the bench. We've talked about how awesome the bench can be. I've liked Isaiah Hartenstein for a long time, Manuel Quickley, Josh Hart, Dante DiVincenzo, the aforementioned. But if the starters are going to play this way, then it kind of makes it a moot point, at least a little bit. I know there will be some shooting regression, but what do you think it would take for the Knicks to actually make a starting lineup change? Or is this way too early to talk about that?
It's probably way too early to talk about because I think the only realistic change they could make, or I would say meaningful one, would be, are we going to move away from Julius Randle? Because I just what are you going to do at the 5? You can put in Hartenstein, but that he can open up the floor a little bit more, but Tibbs wants the traditional rim protector on the court as much as possible. And you're not going to sub out the way Barrett is shooting from 3. And just Quentin Grimes has not had the best start to the year. But knowing what he can do from 3, it might be more of a matter of, hey, is there a way to get Quentin Grimes' volume up? And I think a lot of people, when they talk about that, is we want to see him attack more off the dribble or just get more touches. And it's on this roster, it's can he fire up as many threes as possible? And he's going to get more defensive attention because of how teams are going to help off Randle. I don't know what the starting lineup change would necessarily be. I think a lot of fans would say, well, if you could, sub out Julius and maybe you put in Hart, or do you go super small and throw in Quickly or Dante DiVincenzo? It's just not going to happen. I really think if there's going to be a progression to the mean with this roster, it's going to have to come from Julius Randle playing smarter, being a little bit more efficient. And I think the bigger thing is just not hesitating, not pounding the ball away when he's beyond the arc. Take those threes and get rid of the ball a little bit quicker on certain possessions. Again, I think he's done a better job of some of the passing stuff overall, but even we've seen some really bad turnovers from him as well. And so his entire game, right from defense, his closeouts, the times that he's going to switch, it just needs to be better. And I know he's a divisive figure and his value around the league is probably all over the place. He's incredibly, incredibly important to the Knicks. And so as long as he's on this roster, they need him to be no worse than their third best player.
No, for sure. That's got to happen. And to your point about whether it was a lineup change to get him out of there and get somebody smaller in there, that's just not a long-term solution either. It's definitely something where you're trying to put a Band-Aid over a bullet wound, and that is a problem. And speaking of wounds, RJ Barrett, we just saw him miss a game with a sore knee. Is there a level of concern there with him missing some time?
There's a level of concern just because it takes a lot for him to miss a game, and just knowing how Tibbs's teams are run, for him to miss a game this soon and when he's been playing as well as he has, there is that mild concern. But I haven't seen anything based on the reporting that would make me think it's more than just general soreness. And so hopefully that isn't something that crops up, because he has been at worst their third best player. If you want to factor in Emmanuel Quickley, he's probably been their second best player just based off some of the attention he's commanding when he's putting the ball on the deck. So I think it was almost encouraging against Cleveland to see how much they still kind of needed him, but it was troubling in the sense that Cleveland was missing 2 of its top guys still. And so something to monitor. I'm not going to worry just yet because it doesn't seem like the reporting or the way that he was a game time decision, I think, before he got the scratch. And so to go from game time decision to DEFCON 1 worry would be, that'd be quite the leap.
Yeah, that'd be wild. Hopefully it's nothing too serious with him. Okay, well, so given that we are recording this before Knicks Bucks, on the audio side of things, folks will hear this before then, but on the video side of things, they won't. The Knicks are in a group now with Milwaukee, Washington, Miami, and Charlotte. Do you have a take on the in-season tournament heading into this thing? What's going to go down?
The in-season tournament things feels like such a Tibbs team tournament, to where it's they already care about the regular season. And so if you're going to add stakes in the form of being able to win a trophy and get some extra money, I would think that the Knicks are one of the squads that take it more seriously than others. Where you name that group, And it's the Wizards are just kind of out there, and they might be like one of the most ridiculous teams in NBA history. We know the Heat are just not going to care. Like the Knicks and the Hornets just feel like they're going to care a whole bunch about the in-season tournament. And so I'm all for trying things. I think the NBA misses the mark a lot when it comes to what they do with the All-Star game, but I'm willing to give the in-season tournament a chance. And when you look at it from the Knicks perspective specifically, the way they're coached, the way that they play, even when they're struggling for the most part, I think they'll be one of the more entertaining teams to watch because I think that they will already ascribe stakes to the outcome, whereas maybe with other teams, other players, other coaches, it might take a few go rounds for them to warm up to this idea of, oh, the in-season tournament means something.
Could definitely see Tibbs having his starters play 42 in this particular tournament. That'll be hilarious. And hopefully it doesn't have any negative ramifications because I want this thing to be successful for a lot of people and just to introduce another wrinkle of fun into what should be a more fun regular season. But we will see what happens. He is Dan Favale of Bleacher Report, excuse me, covering the New York Knicks. Dan, thank you so much for hopping on with me, and I'm looking forward to talking to you soon, dude.
No problem. Thanks for having me as always. I'll talk to you soon.